Okay, our next speaker, Pascal Hardy, is the founder of Agripolis. His project, Nature Urbaine, is to be the world's largest urban farm, set on the rooftops of Paris. It sounds like a utopian dream written by Thomas More, but it is soon to be reality. And like this garden will grow to benefit all, so do good deeds and good ideas. Bienvenue, Pascal Hardy.
Good afternoon. Please forgive my poor English. I'm French. Nobody's perfect. My own story is a story of resilience. I am one of the very first victims of climate change in Paris, in France, sorry. And this is the reason why I'm in a wheelchair. I'm talking to you about this because not to tell my story, but because we are all facing a major accident with climate change and nature collapse. So we're going to lose a lot of our way of life, a lot of the goods we consume, etc. So we need to build resilience. And one way to do this is urban farming. So one mistake people make about recovering from major accidents is considering that it requires courage. I don't think it requires courage. It requires will and decision. And now it's time to make decision. So as I had a brand new tractor, I decided to be a farmer. We're going to see now a short video showing some of the farms we set. I created Agripolis, and now we have set 10 urban farms, mostly in France. And we're going to see them right now while I'm talking. So I wanted it to be a change. I wanted to happen. And more than ever, we need to do so. Urban farming is a way to do this, but we must give way to other food systems. Urban farming is not only about producing and consuming different products. It's rebuilding some new food systems. My vision is that all available places in the cities could be used for producing food and feed the urban people who are the majority of the humanity today. Because urban farming does not concern only our countries, but it also concerns third world countries. Everywhere in the world you find different types of urban farms. So the idea is, is to take these tower techniques and to set a technical system that can adapt to any climate, any situation on the land, or on the rooftop, outside or inside, and also to many environments and climates. And that's what you see in these movies. The idea is to have a closed-loop technique, so have to be very, very saving on resources. And for example, with these towers you see, we use only 10% of the water that would be used to produce the same thing elsewhere. It's the same for nutrients. And it's important to have that technique going everywhere, very sober in terms of resources. And of course, the idea is to produce foods you can respect. As you can see, we have these farms in different contexts, and we consider that the issue is also to give way to new food systems and to give services to the people we work for. This farm you're seeing now is on a housing building, and we had to give services to the people living in this building, not only serve food, but also have some activities and things like that. With these farms, you can produce almost all vegetables you know, except potatoes and things like that, because you don't have soil. And not having soil doesn't mean you have low-quality products. Everybody knows you can do fantastic things in soil, but you may also produce shitty products. It all depends on the plants you use, on the pesticides you put or not, etc., etc. It's the same with these vertical farming techniques. You can do fantastic things using the proper methods, but you can do shitty things if you don't care. Of course, we tried the first way, and we are now serving food in many places. So the first mission of urban farming is to contribute to feed the urbans. And doing this, we have to do it in a very efficient way. We must be very conservative with resources. We must be very efficient on what we use, make the good choice to save all the resources, close the loops, using the waste, minimizing the waste, avoiding package, etc., etc. So that's what we do. And the idea is not to oppose different kind of agriculture, but it's to start something new using better methods. And of course, we don't use pesticides. So the idea is to have a virtuous production, but also to avoid food mice. And that's a big issue. I don't know the situation in Sweden, but in France, it takes 1,200 kilometers per average to bring food to your plate. We have crazy systems with trucks going everywhere, and that's one of the main points of urban farming. Another issue, of course, is to create social link, and that's what we do. We have pedagogical aspects, and also we have to create some relationship within the places we are. That's why in our farms there's always a social dimension, although our farms are mostly productive farms. And last but not least, the idea is to create urban resilience. We are now facing in many cities high urbanization rates, and we are facing these phenomena called heat islands. And I can assure you, when you are in the middle of our towers, you can feel the difference, several degrees compared to other places, and that's important. Of course, we still don't have any impact, and all the farms in the world have no impact yet, but we must go on this way to minimize these heat islands. Here you have the map of Montreal, and you can figure the heat islands in Montreal. Another issue is to increase food security. As I said before, urban farming doesn't concern only our countries, but for example, in Africa, you have many people, they take big plastic bags, they put soil, and they grow, for example, tomatoes next to their house or on the rooftop. And it's a new revenue, and it's a way to secure the food security. Sorry. Another issue is to create new jobs. And I come from a country where administration is God. And explaining that you have farmers in the center of Paris, which is a much more dense city than Stockholm, then this is a real challenge. But it is interesting to mix different types of jobs like this. So let's see some of these projects. This one is next to a big supermarket. We say hypermarket in France. And the issue is not only to produce and to sell in the shop. The issue is deeper. We are helping this supermarket to renew its model, because the model of the supermarkets and hypermarkets is going down and is less attractive for people nowadays. And we are trying with them to find a new model for hypermarkets. So we are working on their business, not just on their supply. It's the same for this one. It's on top of a hotel next to Paris in Boulogne. And their issue is that they have to fight against Airbnb and companies like that. And they have to refound their model of hotel and rebuild attraction for hotels in city centers. This is inside the supermarket. As I said, we directly sell 0 kilometers food in the supermarket. This one is interesting because it's on top of a swimming pool, right in the center of Paris. And here again, it's not just producing and consuming new kind of products. It's also helping the municipality to show that they have program, and not only greening program, but programs that have a strong impact in environmental policy. And that's the sense of this one. Next one is the biggest farm in the world on a rooftop, and it will start next April. So we are building it now. You will be able to visit it from April. And this one is inside Paris and is designed to provide food to local inhabitants, of course, to supermarkets, hotels, restaurants, etc. It's a huge scale-up for us, but it's also significant of the fact that now there are opportunities not to do, I would say, proofs of concepts, but something really productive and really active in the city. This is another view of this farm from the rooftop. And of course, we are not alone doing this. There are hundreds and hundreds of urban farmers through the world. This example is called La Caverne. They grow endive, or annotated chicory, I don't know the exact name. And this used to be a car park. So this is a way of changing the destination of some places. Others do mushrooms and things like that in such caves or car parks now. We have several in Paris, and I know they are also in New York City. Another example is Detroit. In Detroit, they do it with wasted land within the city. You have this a lot also in Chicago. Most of the time, it's poor people cultivating vegetables to sell to the people working in the offices. So we still have the dimension of securing a revenue and producing for all the city. And the last one, I can't show many, but is in Hong Kong on top of a very high building. Here the issue is more finding some place, because those who know Hong Kong know that you miss place for agriculture, but it's the same in Singapore, it's the same in Japan, and these micro farms are developing a lot in this country, and the main driver is finding room for them. This is the last one in Brussels. As you can see, it's evident, it's designed to create social link. It's not a productive farm. So you have various issues and a large diversity of urban farms. What I want to say is trying to build new food systems requires to see food systems as ecosystems. and give up the linear view we have today. We push on a button and the products come from abroad and we consume them and that's it. We have to consider closing the loops because our present systems are dangerous. Please consider what's happening in Brazil or in some countries in Asia, and then you will figure how urgent it is to move on this. So it's a systemic conception of food systems. We also need to acknowledge that we entered in the Anthropocene. So why am I talking about this? It's because we have to give up our present conception, which is more or less nihilistic, and also give up the conception, I would say the traditionalist conception, thinking that the only way to produce good food is to do it in soil right in the middle of France or Italy. As I said before, it all depends on the technique you use. So we must not fear to combine technology and life, but we must do it properly, and that's what we are trying to do. Just a quick view through history, back to Greece and the ancient times. The Greeks were, concerning nature, were fascinated by the perpetual renewal. They called this physis. Then came the Middle Ages, and it was an age of fear and something. They had to fight diseases. They had to fight, as we do today. Nothing is changing. And they had to find predators and all this. But man was still, I would say, inferior from nature. But now everything has changed. It's all started with the Lumière philosophy. And some thinkers, some of them were French, sorry for that, but they consider that nature should be a slave to mankind. Literally, nature must be a slave to human mankind. So this is what it gave in the 20th century. And considering urban farming, I have the feeling that now the issue to go beyond this is that we must, I would say, naturalize our cities and our way of production. And we must accept that our products are closer from nature using techniques. So it's the naturalization of products. And the other way is to artificialize a part of nature, and that's what we do when we grow those plants on the towers. So the idea, of course, is to make nature an ally and stop fighting against it. So we must create some vegetation serving the city for islands, heat islands, for food security, etc., etc., all the issues I quoted before. I think the key issue is to humanize our civilization. And if you think about our conception of the city, I think it is interesting to consider that maybe we could see our cities like fractals. You know, those figures where each elementary piece contains the whole. I don't know the situation in Sweden, but in France, we are dying from this zoning concept, saying there are places where you should live, other places where you should work, other places where you should produce, etc., etc. You understand that by bringing food production within the city, you mix all this. And I think it's a good way of thinking the different uses of the city. In my country, it's almost impossible to have a car park on the ground, then offices then shops on the ground floor, offices over, and houses on top. because of the regulations. But if we think this way, like a fractal, we can make progress in this and break some of these regulations. So we must give up this zoning concept, and urban farming helps lessening the gap. So this is a meeting of architects, so I need to say a few words about this. Of course, you all know about green building trends and all this, and the search for rehabilitated spaces in cities, so I won't talk about this. But I think I want to quote two things, two ideas. What I see, and it's in link with greening the cities, is more and more buildings with organic shapes, like this one, which is in Angers in France. Well, or this one I love. This is the kind of house I want to live in. This is in Japan. The architect is Kotaro Ide, and for me, it's a dream for organic shapes. I also want to quote an architect named Vincent Caillebotte, some of you may know, and he invented a concept named archibiotect. So I just quote what he said. He designs biomimetic and plus energy buildings that produce their own power, vertical forests, pollution-removing towers and boats, floating cities and ocean scrapers, and of course, vertical food farms. What is interesting, for my opinion, but I'm not an architect, is that it's not only changing the shape of the building, it's that the structure itself comes from biomimetism. And as you can see here, is building new spaces like this. Another example is this one. This is a depolluting tower he designed. Or this one looks like a hive. And I think this approach is very interesting. Of course, these are futuristic approaches, but in Belgium and in France, he starts having a strong influence. And I see a direct link with what we are doing. So this is one very futuristic. Not for now. Okay, so as a conclusion, I want to say that urban farming helps us find a collective sense of purpose. I think it's important, and it also brings the necessary vitality and liveliness. We still have some reasons to believe in ourselves, and of course, by urban farming, in our resilience abilities. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.